and Sean.
Episode 59 of Gaming BS. Thanks for tuning into Gaming and BS, a podcast about tabletop RPGs and other miscellaneous topics of geekery. I am your host, Sean.
And I'm Brett. I'm the other guy.
Yes, the other guy, indeed. Hey, I gotta say something now. I was going to the restaurant to get some food, grabbing some food for dinner. Mm-hmm. And I saw the picture you posted.
Of
you when you were a kid. That is hilarious.
Phil and Chris on Misdirected Market said something like, hey, we should see if Brett's always had like a beard and tattoos, if that's how he's always looked or whatever. And they were trying to get Kevin Lovecraft, buddy of mine, friend of the show and theirs, and games with both, obviously gamer. He's in both Sean and my groups. And if he could grab a picture, and I told Kevin, I said, don't worry, I got something. I said, I'm pretty sure my wife will dig one up. And well, lo and behold, so there it is. It's on the old Google Plus community.
Is that really a picture of you?
It is a picture of me. It may or may not have been touched up to highlight certain aspects, but
that is hilarious. Somebody's got some Photoshop foo.
That would be the wife.
Really? Holy cow! I didn't. Wow, that's. We'll put that up on the website and Twitterers and all that other stuff, so everybody can see what Brett looked like when he was a wee young lad,
a wee little gamer boy. Indeed. Yeah, the wife, Susan, my wife, did the banners. We'll have it Game Hole and stuff too. So.
Oh yeah, well yeah, we should mention that. Huh?
Absolutely.
Announcements.
What do you got?
Get into this thing or what?
Yeah, let's pretend we're doing a show. What do you got for announcements, Sean?
All right, so I wanted to give everybody a heads up. Gamehole Con is in 2 weeks. Oh shit!
Yeah,
I better start writing up some freaking characters for his game.
Hey, Sean, got some NPCs to write up? Is that what that panicked look in your eye is, Sean?
Dude, I got a lot of showpieces, but it's gonna be cool. I'll be there, like the presentation will be awesome, and the whole game will just completely suck.
Like it was great. It was like really, it was beautiful, but I don't remember what happened.
It was a terrible DM.
But he made some really cool figs. We got to play with.
Yeah. All right. So Gamehole Con, the plan is this. For those of you that aren't going to be there, that's okay. And this is really kind of geared towards you. So they have something like 8 speaking seminars, panels, whatever you want to call them. And Brett and I said, man, I don't know if and they're literally, they start at like, I don't know, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning.
I think they start about 8 or 9. Yeah, I think you're right.
8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And then they go until like 6 o'clock, and they're all 2 hours apiece, back to back. And I looked at this thing and I'm like, dude, that's a rigorous schedule. And on top of if we wanted to run games and kind of socialize and all this other stuff.
Well, at first we're like, we could grab a lot of these really cool seminars. We could, record them all and look at all of them and like, holy crap. Alex Cameron and the boys pulled together a lot of shit. I don't know if we can catch them all.
One of the guys, Mike Mihalis, who's in charge of the guest pieces, had said, you're going to do all of them? And I thought, well, why not, man? And then I was like, he's got a good point. That's kind of obscenely insane. So what we decided on, Brett and I kind of came together and some input from Gamehole guys. And this is what we're going to do. So each day, we're going to do a recap of the day. And that's just going to be
from our perspective, obviously. I mean, there's certain things we may or may not have seen.
Yeah. Brett and I sitting down. Maybe we have a guest on the show. Who knows? But we'll be sitting down, recap the day. And we'll probably do that late in the evening. It's yet to be determined how we're going to release these. I don't know if we're going to release them at the con where we literally record it and upload it and launch it, or if we just record everything and then after the con put it all out there. I would like to do it as it happens, but we'll see time wise and bandwidth wise. I mean, the internet connection may just completely suck there and I may not be able to physically upload it. But here's the deal. So Friday at 10 a.m., the con starts November 6, 7, and 8. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's not a 4-day con. I'm taking off Thursday. Brett, I think, is taking off Thursday.
Yep.
Right. So Friday at 10 a.m., I have a game, and that's Weird Wars Savage Worlds. That's just an FYI to everybody.
And that's full, by the way. So you got a full table of people. They're ready to experience these awesome player characters that you're currently developing.
Five people. I got
Awesome.
5 slots. Yeah, that'll be fun. And then at 4 o'clock, so that'll be 10 to 2, and then I got a couple hour gap. And then at 4 o'clock, which will give me time to set up for Ask the Bastard with the Dungeon Bastard, Bill Cavalier. So if you don't know who that is, go to dungeonbastard.com.
That's going to be a blast.
Watch his videos. Yeah, watch his videos. It's hilarious. And so Bill will be there in full force, and then we'll record his session of what he talks about. So I think they have scheduled, like they allocate these panels for 2 hours. I don't know if each one's going to be 2 hours long. So we will cover that. And that obviously with 2 hours will be at 6 o'clock at the end of the day, Friday. Sean will probably have to come home, let the dog out. And then Brett and I, depending on what's going on, I think I have a 7 o'clock game that I may or may not go to that night. But nonetheless, then we'll probably do a recap of the day. As Sean, am maybe running my game, I'll probably give Brett maybe a portable recorder, and he can go around the hall and talk to whoever he wants. I got to educate Brett on how to use the recorder and a microphone.
What's this thing? What's going on? How come people won't talk?
Brett, what is that thing sticking out of your butt? That's not how you use the microphone.
Shut up. Works just fine. Anyway.
All right. So this is just what we have scheduled. Brett's going to probably go and do his thing too. Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m., Steve Jackson on Steve Jackson Games. So Steve Jackson will be there, and then we're going to record him for a couple hours during his talk. And then right after that, literally at noon, D&D Story Seasons, the next big thing with Chris Perkins from Wizards of the Coast.
Cool.
So if you play 5e or if you want to know more about Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know the focus of what Chris's talk will be, but I've met Chris. He's a really articulate guy. He's he's a really awesome game master and dungeon master. And so he's coming again. We'll record him. And then, so I mentioned the recap shows probably Friday and Saturday night. These are all going to be released on the bonus BS side of the podcast. So right now we're recording kind of episode 59, Gaming and BS, every week, Sunday. Set your watch to it. And then we launch it on Tuesday by noon. These are all going to come through bonus BS. Now, bonus BS and Gaming BS's feed is all in one or separately. We have like 3 feeds. There's the combination feed. We have one that's separate of each. So get it, just so you know, if you've always subscribed to us from the beginning, the feed's never changed. So I just mentioned that in case you don't get it, and it'll be different than, so if you subscribe to the one feed, you're going to get probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shows in one weekend, because we're going to do recaps each day. We're going to do Bill, record Bill again, record Steve Jackson, Chris Perkins, and then we're going to do our own regularly scheduled Gaming and BS show Sunday night.
So the reason that the short version, we wanted to keep, some people could really give a fuck about cons. That's not their thing. They don't care about live coverage. And if you don't, you can simply ignore the bonus BS stuff because it's bonus. It's not the show itself. So if it is your thing, great. If you're like, yeah, whatever, it's not my thing, I don't care, then fine. We don't take up your time.
Yep. That is just the things that we have scheduled. Like, we are going to absolutely do these things. Now, if Brett's like, hey, dude, give me the portable recorder and a mic, and he wants to go to the dealer hall, or if he wants to interview Frank Metzer or that Ed Greenwood guy or whatever, that's totally up to Brett. And so we may have some of that. I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know if it's going to be, 5-minute blurbages.
We're going to just do it ad hoc on that stuff. We'll see what happens. If we get some good stuff, great. And the other pieces, if we get something, it turns out Brett's a complete fucking Luddite, doesn't know how to use a portable recorder, and we have no sound or shit sound, well, might not post it. So we'll see what happens.
Now, I have been considering periscoping. So when we're not kind of doing all these things, I think we have a table. It's a kind of a media table out in the front of Lion Energy. It's kind of the lobby welcome space. It's open for other podcasters. We may do Periscope. I may get a stand for my iPad and then plug a mic in. And
for those of us who are not in the know, Sean,
Periscope, if you're not familiar, Periscope is live TV. So what we do is we hook, it's usually through your iPad or your iPhone. In Android, I think is supported. Periscope is Twitter's product, but basically what it allows you to do is live stream something. You can plug a mic into it and you can grab the sound into it, but people can't talk back like we're doing with Blab here. So we may just set up a stand and have that running all the time at the desk, and plug a mic in there so people can say hello and hey, we're at Gamehole or whatever. Maybe we walk around with the iPad and, live Periscope the con and look at different games as they're occurring, or hey, there's Bill, and hey, there's Frank, and
we'll see what we can do.
Merle Rasmussen from Top Secret and Steve Jackson. We just start like bringing them on and just saying, hey, look here. Hey, what's going on, Steve? What do you think of the con so far? And we'll just Periscope it live. I think that might be cool. I don't know if I have the equipment to do the Periscope really well. The iPad mic in the iPad will work just fine, but it'd be nice to get like an actual microphone that sounds really good. And it's more money for me to spend stuff on, so. Whatever. It's an investment, right? So anyways, if you have any questions about Gamehole Con, if you're coming, we're looking forward to meeting you. By all means, you got to come up to us. Brett and his our favorite number one fan has actually done some banner ads for us. We're gonna have some bookmarks,
buttons. Got buttons to give away.
Got some buttons to give away.
Buttons may or may not get you a beer. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I might have to do something there. I don't know. We'll see.
But anyway. Yes, yeah, we're looking to have a good time. And if you can't make it, that's cool. We're gonna hope to capture some of the essence and throw it out there for everybody to hear, and hopefully entices you to come next year. Sound good, Brett?
I think that works, man.
All right. Let's get into Random Encounter. Random Encounter is the element of the show where we talk about voicemails, emails, and media comments from social media and our blog from folks that comment on those things. You, the listener, thank you. So we've got a couple this week. Looks like
some good stuff.
You want to take one of these or what?
Well, you had a lot of time there, so I'll grab this one from Matt Martinez on our Google Plus comments from a previous email from Mike Walsh on episode 58, the last one we just talked about. Mike had talked about a fate accelerated fate point mechanic breaking immersion. We talked about this last time. Mike had said, "What do you guys think?" We rattled a little bit on it. And Matt Martinez says, so if Mike Walsh's Fate ambivalent player is the same person who posted to the Facebook tabletop RPG one-shot group, here's what the player had to say. Quote, if a lesson in Fate had a lesson in Fate tonight, the GM was telling me how he could offer us Fate points to do things, and I had to physically stop myself from screaming, metagaming at him. So does the system really encourage you to speak out of character? Really? I heard it was supposed to be a great system to encourage role-playing, but perhaps not immersion. Or immersion, depending if you're slurring your words or not. So further down the thread, when someone else tried to explain to him how compelling works, he replied, quote, well, I can compel my own character just fine without someone talking to me out of character. Matt goes on to say, I think you bring up a good point, though, in that telling a player that he or she has a plus or minus 5 to a die roll, or is at advantage or disadvantage to roll is just as much out of character as handing him or her a fate point and compelling or invoking an aspect. Perhaps it's not fair of me, and this is Matt, of course, to make this assumption, but I just got the impression that since this mechanic was so different from anything else he previously used to, the player automatically felt that it was bad, wrong fun. The parenthetical aside is also, it's possible that Matt is wrong and that the player Mike Walsh was talking to isn't the same person. It just seemed that the timing and the subject matter were too perfect to be coincidental. So, Matt, I got to agree with you. I think that's probably the same individual that we got there. So kind of the fun piece of, the fun bit of social media is you can actually cross-reference people's bad or good things and sort it out. I still think, I commented on this as well. I still believe that my example of the +5, -5 on a die roll or advantage, disadvantage is no different. It is a sometimes the language itself can have a connotative meaning. If you say, I'm compelling you, some people may think that feels very out of character or has just a bad connotative feel to them. They don't like those words for whatever reason. So I could see that causing some problems or whatever. But, and the other thing, as we've said many times, and other folks like Chris and Phil over at Misdirected Mark said, sometimes the game's not for you. It's not your thing. You can totally do it without it. And if that is something, if you have a player who desperately wants immersion and that type of language or focus, they feel it's yanking them out of that world, I guess that's not the game for them. Enough said there. Sean, anything else?
No.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, I don't have much to comment on that one. It's I've hashed out a little bit on it. And, yeah, so I mean, in order to comment intelligently, I'd have to have a little bit more insight into Fate. I just haven't played enough of it. But I think it's just preference. If you feel as though it breaks immersion and because of the mechanics, then totally get it.
The other thing I would say again is that you're learning a new system. To expect full system immersion in your first session is probably not going to happen that often. Some systems may be totally ass kicking awesome and you're just immersed right out of the gate. But you know what? You're learning a new system. It has new mechanics. You're going to have to break the fourth wall and talk to the damn game masters and ask them rules questions. So anyway.
Yep. All right, next one. So Jeff Rodemacher, he comments on off of episode 58, which we did Wimp or Badass when you start your role-playing game. So he says, let me ask, because you didn't really go into it, what are the pros and cons of the level grind? Also of starting out higher? Seems to me that starting at a higher level allows you access to more powers, but the world around you also ratchets up to meet you where you are. That is very valid. So that's a good point, which it's like, well, I start out at his first level in Pathfinder, which I think is a little, I think it's safe to say that it's a little different than if you start out at first level in first edition AD&D.
Absolutely. Yeah. First edition AD&D, step on a fork, you're dead.
And what Jeff is talking about is if you start out in first level Pathfinder, you might be tougher, but you're still wimpier in that game system. So then as things ramp up, your CRs ramp up, and it's kind of like this parallel graph, right? As you ramp up, the monsters and the encounters ramp up the same.
Yeah.
I don't see that in AD&D. I think everything's deadly in AD&D.
Well, AD&D doesn't have the concept of the CR, right? There is no mapping of saying, oh, a purple worm and you're only fourth level. That doesn't make sense. In AD&D, be like, you didn't run away from the purple worm? Of course you're fucking dead.
Right. So there's the big difference, I think. I hope that clears it up for Jeff. Now, the grind, the pros and cons of the grind, I think the con of the grind is you might not make it through the grind.
Yeah, and
you're gonna potentially higher death rate.
And the other piece, if you're playing a game system that is built on a grind, right, where Dungeon Crawl Classics, any of the D20 games, the F20s and so on, or anything that has a climb like that, where it's not natively designed to start off as a 10th level, whatever. It feels like, because the system doesn't have any, and it's not like you can't come up with an out-of-system solution for this, but the system does not have a way for you to make up all that table time, right? The behind the screen or in front of the screen time that you had, quote unquote, earning all 10 of those levels. So I think, so I think that sometimes there is a feeling of, not cheating is a horrible phrase for that, but it feels like you circumvented something, you just kind of leapt ahead and whatever. So in a level crunching system, I think that's just something that it feels very artificial. Or a game like GURPS or whatever, it's designed to say, hey, you're a 150 point or a 300 point character. The game is built like that. And as we said last time, Gumshoe, with Knights Black Agents, you start out badass because that's just the way the system's designed right out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, so I think when the people, just to comment on Jeff, I think when people want to start out like, hey man, kind of want to start out at like 5th level, or I want to, hey man, can we start out at 10th level? I think people that want to do that, there is an element of gameplay that you will encounter at those levels and this is obviously speaking about specifically level and D&D-ish games, D20 derivatives, what have you. When you start out at 5th or 10th, you don't maybe want to deal with the smaller stuff. Okay, great. It's always goblins. It's always kobolds. It's always like these smaller level hit point encounters to deal with, where this is more, maybe you want to get into like, I want to start battling dragons and I can't if I'm only 2nd level. So I want to get into the real thick of the big meaty gritty badass monsters, or you want your character to have that much more power. So, if you're a wizard or a magic user in AD&D and you're going to start out at your 5th or 10th level, you're going to want the big fireball and the big, huge kabooms, where at the beginning levels, you're just not going to have those. And so that's the big difference.
We talked about a little last time. I mentioned you can tweak it, right? I can have a red dragon that's defeatable by a 2nd level party, right? It's young, it's small, whatever. But you've got to nerf the shit out of it, right? Is what happens. Right. Even in the monster manual or any variation on that, it's usually designed to be a big badass son of a bitch critter. So liches, again, big powerful creature or whatever they are. You take Savage Worlds even. There's different levels of play within Savage Worlds. And by being 10th level or being that uber level or stepping up, you do have access to more power. And then you don't have to, as a game master, there is a nice bit then when I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to spend the time to nerf the Lich to make it something 5th level characters can fight. You can play it as is. You just got to be a CR level that matches it as such. It can be easier.
Yes.
I think, though, as we said,
I hope that helps.
I think so. Hey, Jeff, if nothing else, you're coming to Game Home, man. I will be more than happy to sit down, BS with you, grab a beer or two, and hash this out further.
Yeah, right. Be there, and he's in my game, I think.
Yes, he is. I'm pretty sure he is.
Oh shit!
If nothing else, he's got to come back to me and go, dude. How I don't why didn't you warn me? I don't understand. This was so bad.
You can't run a game. Bad. He showed up late. Didn't have anything with him.
Showed up late. He was drunk again. It was terrible. He smelled like whiskey and dope. It was so bad. This guy's terrible.
I should totally. So it's on Friday at like 10 in the morning. I should wake up at like 9:45.
Come your hair like completely all fucked up wood
after a huge freaking bender, and then hair. Don't take a shower, sunglasses, and just walk in and be like, "All right, you guys here to play some? What are you playing? What are we playing? I don't know what the hell is going on.
Just pull a Tim Kask. You all right? You all right? You're all dead. Moving on.
Hey, that garbage can. You guys want to move that over here just for a second?
Nice. All right. Moving on.
Anybody got any weed at the table? Hey, man.
One of our utter BSers, one of our patrons, Joe Swick on Google Plus wrote, we got a link out there for it. This is kind of interesting, and it does tie to a point and to the topic of today. Just listen to his sort of actual play podcast. He's not listening to the podcast itself. And at the end of the session, one of the players cried after help arrived in a dire situation. Cry? Really? Is this common? So, nice. We had a kind of a nice little back and forth on the community around it. And I know, despite what Chris Nizak will have you believe, I have actually had people cry at my table, not because I've beat them or anything or threatened them, or stomped on their cat or something in front of them. I've had men and women cry at my table. It was a pretty intensive game where we played. It was every week, all very personal. It was a kind of horror. It was a vampire game. It was pretty crazy at the time. A lot of fun. But I can definitely see that if you're bought into your character, and Austin talked about this in one of his posts on our Google Plus page as well, that if you really do care about the character, it's kind of that emotional, shot you can get from watching a movie that pulls at you or reading a book or something. I could see where that might be possible. And I don't think it's very common. I'm just saying I've seen it. I've made people cry. So
Yeah,
Sean's
I
not.
don't know, man.
Sean's not good enough to make anyone cry.
If you've run into, hey, here's the deal. So before I go all crazy, if you have cried at a D&D game and it's not from a personal injury or a flying obstacle like a D20 that's hit you in the face, I want to know who you are.
You're just gonna mock them and point? That'd be terrible.
I will not mock you, but I will want you in one of my games because I think you could bring some sensitivity to me.
That would be, well, it could be helpful.
I think sometimes I don't get there, and I think I could use that.
I honestly think that depending who you're.
Have you seriously had somebody cry at your table?
I did. I had one of the guys I was playing with in college, Brad. I cannot remember his last name. We were playing.
Where's Brad today?
Where's Brad today? I think he. God,
he's like that guy. He's like that guy from Bachelor Party. The dude who's just a nervous wreck. Oh, you got so long, you guys. Take it, man.
No. He was he was an Army guy, so he cried a lot. Sean.
I loved her, bitch.
He's ex-Army, Sean, so he cried a lot. You know what that's like. Sorry. Anyway, anyhow, Sean's ex-Army, by the way, so I'm giving him shit. Anyway, Brad and I were playing. Brad was playing, and his character had built up this very intense relationship with this other character and NPC. Just very friendly, and the person helped him back and forth, all this good stuff. And then it turned out that this NPC, of course, I freaking betrayed him. And I crushed this huge thing he'd been building, destroyed dependent player characters, all this stuff. And the person who he thought, had this great friendly love for him and everything was going great turned out to be a complete fuck. And he looked at me, and I could see that the tears started down his eyes. He goes, I have to go to the bathroom right now. And I said, dude, that's fine. Go take a piss. And he kind of just walked off. And someone else goes, is he crying? I said, nope, he's cool. That's fine. Just keep going. And I've had a couple of women I've played with over the years in Amber. Even a D&D game one time was a pretty intensive. It was more role play than like hack and slash. And the characters, again, it came down to very heavy character investment, and then having an NPC or even a player character. We've had that before, where a player character turns on the other player in a very PvP type environment, and they go, oh my God, you just destroyed practically a year's worth of real time, whatever, through this motion. Oh my God, you wrecked all this stuff. And you could see it in people's eyes where they're like, okay. I had the one woman get up and say, I'll be right back. She wandered off. She had tears running down her face. She came back, cleaned herself up, said, I'm fine. We're good now. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And on the other hand, I've had my friend Tabby murder her husband's character at the table. And I said, are you okay? She goes, yeah, motherfucker had to die. I'm like, okay, Tabby, easy there, girl. So I've had people go from everything from crying about something that's very intense all the way to like just kind of giggling their way through something. So everybody handles the stress of the moment differently. And I think the biggest thing is that if somebody does show that much emotion at your table, that may be the time. It's not an X card moment. It's a time you might say, hey, let's take a quick break. It might be the time to say, hey, go outside, smoke if you need one, or hey, let's go get another beer. Let's do something. But it might be a time for you to take a cue as a game master, even other players, and request a break, because it's conceivable that the person right there, how they got to this emotional state, you may or may not know, but they deserve respect and not to be mocked, I think, is the main thing. Don't make fun of them because they're having a deep emotional response for something you've done, Sean, you dick.
Okay. All right. Let's get into the main topic of discussion, shall we?
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Come on, baby.
You wanna stop something with me? Hotel.
With frozen feet, you try to run, you try to scream, but no more sun you'll ever see, for evil reaches from the crypt to crush you in its icy grip.
I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
What he said about fear. He said, fear is the most subtle and destructive of all human diseases.
What are we talking about, Brett?
Can I just say first before I say this, if I did not hear "Don't Fear the Reaper," I was gonna go, dude, what happened to you? But of course, like the third bit in was "Don't Fear the." I'm like, okay, I was right with the world. We're good now. So I want to talk about fear and horror. If nothing else, we're gonna drop this episode just before Halloween. I used to run a vampire game, as I've said many times in the show. Ran it for a long time, 15 years, and we used to have a special Halloween night, or as close to Halloween as we could, game where we would start at like noon, excuse me, go to about 1, 2 in the morning. We just marathon the fuck out of that game and go. And one of the things I've looked at over the years is I have tried to actually scare my players, like fear and horror. When I'm running a horror RPG in the past, I used to take it as a challenge to say, can I make these men and women at my table personally afraid? Because that's how I wanted them. I wanted them to feel tension. I wanted them to feel afraid. So I used different tricks and ways to, change lighting and sound and location and various different things. And I thought, there's games that have mechanics for that, right? Call of Cthulhu has insanity, and there's you can make a fear check. You can do all these other types of things. How do you take something that that intense, is such an intense emotional response as fear and horror, and bring it into a role-playing game and have it really work? There's a number of times when I played Call of Cthulhu, and I will catch myself going, oh, it's a deep one. Yeah, ooh, it's a fish frog man, and they're mating with the people in the seaside village. Oh, not again. And sometimes you look at that and go, no, wait, my character should be terrified. This is a horrible thing. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. Sean, do you play horror games? Do you deal with the fear like that? Or is that just another sissy emotion that you, as an old school grognard?
Yeah, Brett, I look fear dead in that face, man. Dead right between the eyes.
Uh-huh.
And if I'm playing a game, man, I put an arrow right there. Put it, boom.
Boom, dead.
Fear's gone.
So do you run?
However,
have you run horror RPGs though?
I have not. I have not run horror RPGs in the truest of senses. I mean, I've run Ravenloft. It might have been years ago. I haven't had a lot of horror and implemented a lot of horror into games, unfortunately. That's a personal shortcoming of mine, Brett, that I actually understand and realize, and I am self-aware, and therefore I need to take a look at that and probably expand.
I got to see if I can push this a little bit and make you cry. Anyway, no, in all seriousness though, there is, so
every Halloween I've always wanted to make it a tradition, but I've never pushed it.
To me,
it'd be nice to have a standing game with one of my groups or something, or even just players that said, here's the deal, like invite maybe. So I have I think it's safe to say I could probably say that I have like 3 game groups in some capacity or another that has 5 people a piece, and then just extend it to all 15 people. And then every year just do a Halloween game. But I don't.
I've run a John Wick did a King in Yellow. Basically you're a pack of Nazis in the jungle in Africa. It's a hoot. And I've usually find that actually fear and the horror, it comes down to, it's easier to be creepy or kind of unnerving, the pure actual horror, because I think somewhere in your mind as a player and a game master, you're playing a game. So it's hard to absolutely just terrify the shit out of people. But I think one of the pieces, I've said this before, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I really think if you get the right group, you can really get into fear and horror type of RPG, the horror genre. You can play Call of Cthulhu and you can encounter deep ones 10, 15, 20 times. And if it's done right, as the game master and a player, you can really have a heck of a good time with it. And I think that how do I want to do this? Mechanics are really, really helpful for it, because it's one of those times when, I mean, I've joked on the show before, well, fuck the rules. I don't do that. I don't do this. I don't do that. But having some kind of mechanic to test sanity, willpower, humanity, excuse me, things like that help to break down whether the character has to react in a negative way to something that should scare them is, to me, is pretty crucial or critical to play those type of games. Granted, you can do it, right? You can still have people just flat out role play something when there is no mechanic to it. But sometimes I find it's a lot easier to have the mechanic to really help you lean onto it and help people out to be able to role play it effectively. So, Sean, you've played in like Call of Cthulhu.
I've played one Call of Cthulhu game. One. And it was at a game store. I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed it.
No, you played Horror on Sesame Street, dude.
I did. You're right. And so I have played in 3 Call of Cthulhu games. 2 of them were D20 based, and 2 were one was at a game store, 2 were at a con. And I would say that out of the 3, I wasn't afraid or scared. And I think so for a variety of different reasons that we may get into in a bit. Yes, there you go. There, I played in 3, but I wasn't afraid in any of them. Yeah. So I think.
So what if you sit down to play in a horror game with me? Are you expecting that Sean, should be scared?
With you?
God damn it! Nice.
Kind of a trick question. Oh, I'd be always afraid to play with you, Brett.
Nice. Okay. Thanks.
Could be like Toon, and I might be afraid to play with you.
That's because I use real. That's because I use real anvils when I play Toon. That's why.
If you don't know what Toon is, it's an RPG, individual, independently published RPG where you play tunes and you bring in all the tropes of tunes. You drop anvils on each other's characters, and
it's Bugs Bunny Go Ballistic.
Total Bugs Bunny, Wile E. Coyote. Anyways, so I would expect to be. I don't know if I would expect to be afraid unless it's genuinely the game that you're going to present. Like, hey, if you're known maybe, or you have a reputation to run Call of Cthulhu, and it'd be pretty creepy and a horror bend to it. I think the fear part is tough to get in any RPG, no matter what you're playing. Somebody mentioned in the chat room, the mechanic behind Dread. So if you don't know what Dread is, again, independently published game. It's, I don't know how many pages. It's a pretty thin, rules light game that uses a Jenga tower, but not a Jenga tower, a brick tower, whatever it's called, but it's used a Jenga tower. And when you want to accomplish something, you pull out a block, and then if you succeed in pulling out the block without collapsing the entire tower, your task is completed with success. But when things start to get creepy and you're like, okay, I try to do this, and you're like, okay, go ahead and pull a block, and stuff comes, you're like, oh my God, and all those blocks are out after everybody's doing certain things. It has a mechanic of suspense, I think.
See, I think the suspense and tension piece is what I have found over the years to lean into, or to try to leverage to invoke or enforce the horror or fear more than anything else. Okay, you're being chased by a hunting horror, this zombie or a ghoul, something's erupted from the earth in this graveyard, it's chasing you, you've got to climb the fence, it's 2 rounds behind you, you have 2 chances to climb the fence, DC 20, go. And you're like, oh shit, go, dude, we don't have time, go. And making people do things quickly, and using that as like, you only have X number of chances to succeed, or you will be in combat with the thing. That tension brings out the fear. And I think that was, for me, the only way, when you mentioned Ravenloft, that whenever I've played in a Ravenloft game, the only way Ravenloft has ever made me feel anything other than it's a gothic D&D game, is when the Dungeon Master made it tense through rapid action. Like, you got to do this. Go, roll a die. Oh, you roll it. Go. that type of
Right.
bringing up the tension. Because otherwise, D&D as a mechanic, and this is where I'm at, D&D in and of itself, there is I should be able to defeat the monster. I should be able to find a way to beat the thing. In a game like Call of Cthulhu, if you drop an atomic bomb on Great Cthulhu, he dissolves and reforms, and now he's radioactive in the size of a mountain. You can't win against some of these, depending what the game is. Some of these horrors in some of the games, especially a true Lovecraftian, nihilistic, you're fucked scenario, you can't beat it. You can maybe postpone it or forestall the inevitable, but there is no absolute defeat of that monster. So I think, to me, ratcheting up the tension component of it by making people have to go quickly, or even like, look, make a sanity check, because if you fail that, you're out of the combat. Oh shit. Having that immediately, kind of a black or white, if you will, need to win or to succeed at that point.
I agree that Ravenloft is not, I don't think it's a scary horror module. I think it is gothic, like you said, and you can incorporate elements of that. And I do like the suspense piece. Like, you start getting going, let's go. And then if it's failure, bad things happen. So you have this innate anxiety that comes into play. But here, most important, I think, when you sit down with any of your players, just like we talk about every damn episode that's ever been recorded on this podcast, is that if you're talking to your players and you kind of understand, like, hey, here's the deal, we're going to play this game and this is what it's going to be about, and are you bought into it? Okay, sure. So you talk it all out. But I think it's really important for the players and the GM, including the GM, to say, hey, this is a horror game. Take the slapstick shit and leave it at the door.
Yeah,
you could have a little comedic relief, but if it's too much, it's going to be, you might as well play a slasher movie and everything's a trope and it's just funny.
Yeah, if you're going to there are certain things that you kind of have to go out the door. Like, look, we're going to do this. And this is that communication, as you just said at the beginning. Like, look, this is what we're going to do. The other thing that I found, and Austin and I had this conversation once, was that sometimes people feel, because you can't beat the monster, you cannot beat Great Cthulhu, you cannot defeat Nyarlathotep, you cannot defeat the great ancient what the fuck ever god. It's a very unempowering. It's this, I can't win. It can be very a downer type of thing. So some people don't like horror games that they don't feel that they can beat it, right? Because if you read like Lovecraft book, there's nothing you can do. You're fucking dead. There's nothing that's going to happen. But what I'm getting at is that if that isn't, there's different types of horror, right? There's no hope. There's nothing you can do. It's complete nihilism. There is no God. No matter what happens, some horrible entities can eat you. But there's always that. The other way is that there's a survival horror, where you try to get through it, as you said, with some of the slasher movies, trying to get through it just to survive until the end. And there, it's kind of like, you have a clock on a wall, like, look, whoever's left at the end of this gets out of the haunted house, or whatever the case is. But so I think the mechanics can help. And one of the ways to help with the mechanics is to do the tension, make things go faster. And I think that some game systems don't really, like I said, D&D to me just doesn't speak to a horror game. You can try to make it work that way, but as it stands, I don't think it's a really good way to go. At least that's my perception. And I don't think that Call of Cthulhu isn't the only horror game out there. There's Dread. There is
Little Fears.
Little Fears. Pelgrane Press has put out like Fear Itself, Esoterrorists, which are Esoterrorists is kind of a take on Delta Green, in my opinion. You have the New World of Darkness stuff that White Wolf came out with before everything changed over there, but they had Slasher, one of the things I was mentioning in the chat room there, which was very much, people versus crazy slasher people. So there's different types of horror that could be defeated. If it's a person, you can beat a person, perhaps. It doesn't always have to be supernatural horror.
Or can you? Hey, man, Michael Myers and Jason and Freddie and those guys, they didn't go down easy.
No, they did not. Now, the other piece is that horror can be a component of a game system. Art and Gamer F on the other in the chat room were saying, something around, horror's invoked in a war zone to a non-combatant or dealing with that type of thing. There's all sorts of oh, that's Austin. Thank you, Austin. So there are ways to I didn't know he was there. But there are ways to take horror and feather it into a game system. But it has to be done. I don't want to say just right, but if the game has been pretty slapstick D&D up to the point, like, look, everything's been kind of tropey, you're having a lot of fun with it, they'll say, no, dude, look, this is real, man. This is gritty combat. You just saw this thing happen. And then it comes out of the blue like, whoa, what? Now I'm supposed to care? I mean, I've been slaughtering kobold babies and I've killed orc women and children for the past 10 levels, and now all of a sudden I should be worried about this thing? Really?
Well, it's kind of like sitting it's like going to a comedy show and then expecting to like be afraid. You got to be you got to have the right mood, and you got to set the right tone. If you don't do that, it's going to be ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I think so. From a tone perspective, one of the other things I have done, it's kind of kitschy. I know some people aren't huge onto it, but I remember reading John Tynes he was big on Delta Green, and he did Puppet Land, which was Punch and Judy from hell craziness. And he had a series of articles about how to scare the shit out of your players, because his perspective was to have basically, yell at people, scream at them, throw a chair across the floor, physically just act intimidating or frightening, and other types of things, pacing around the room, whispering, and so forth. I have done the bit where my preference for running a horror game tends to be, I like to run them at night. I like it in a room, curtains closed. I like to dim the lights a little bit. That mood, that physical mood you can set just in the room itself, just that stage setting. You take a piece from Focal Point by the guys from Gnome Stew, and you set the room, and that really, really helps. And you clear some of the distractions. If you only have bare minimum on the table, put the snacks in a different place, do something different, but you can set a tone at the table to help get people focused on what's supposed to happen. And again, consistency, so you don't get all crazy slapsticky at the inappropriate times.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Huge. You got to do that. If you don't, it's not gonna work.
So when you think horror, Sean, are there certain tropes or things that you're like, if you sit down and I say, hey, it's a murderous clown, it's another fish person, or if it's one of Brett's games, oh, it's dead babies, that doesn't scare me anymore. Are there certain...
because your players
I
have
overused it. I've numbed it,
dude.
I've numbed it.
They're like, dude, that's the norm.
So the more Call of Cthulhu adventures I read and so on, a lot of people who have talked about that, fighting certain Cthulhu himself and deep ones and so forth seems kind of boring. Is there any horror piece, Sean, that you would be like, oh, it's a vampire, I don't freaking care, I don't want to fight vampires? Is there any...
Remove Cthulhu, remove the... You know what you should do is make it, and if you're going to do a Call of Cthulhu game, make it the frickin' myth. So remove all that bullshit monster crap that everybody thinks is going to happen all the time at the end of the scenario and whatever, and focus in on some of the cultists and the wackiness that they think has to be done in order to summon one of these mythical monsters, mythical old ones, right? Because you could take that into a modern setting where it's like, people are sacrificing crazy stuff, and you come in and it's Apocalypse Now, where
they're kind of doing it for no reason. They're just fucking nuts.
Crazy. Like they're doing it for a reason though. It's just something that you're not used to.
Crazy people have reasons. They're just fucking crazy reasons.
Well, right. But yes, but I mean, they think it's helping summon something, and they could be describing the slaughter of an animal or another person. You got to put it to a level that's kind of crazy when you're describing it to the group and with the tone that if they can picture it, they're going, oh, that's creepy shit, man. This is totally out of control, out of hand, man.
This evil must be stopped. Type of thing.
After they gather their proverbial shit, right?
Exactly.
Like,
After they're done pissing their pants. Oh my God, let's do something about it.
Kids, kids are creepy. Clowns are creepy to me. I don't know. As long as they're not like Bozo the Clown, but clowns are freaking creepy. I mean, American Horror Story, the television series, if you haven't looked at that, good inspiration on some of the stuff.
Yes.
But they did Freak Show, and it was based on a circus troupe that had a lot of freaks in it. And so that was goofy, and it had a clown that had half his jaw removed, and so he had like a mask that was only below his cheekbones and strapped around his face. And then when he removed it, it was like, whoa, that's freaking crazy. His jaw's completely gone. And spoilers, jaw's completely gone. Teeth's completely rotted. I mean, just, you got to take it to a level when you're describing it that freaks people the F out. And then I think then you start setting the mood to be really kooky and crazy, or you got the guy that just doesn't blink all the time and just sits there.
Just stares
never
at you.
blinks.
Yeah.
It stares at you and always talks in a really casual, monotone voice. And maybe they're the front office guy, right? They're not, they're dressed in like a weird tuxedo, and he always talks in the same voice, really nice, and never blinks. It's just like this weird, goofy stuff that you're like, you walk away and you're like, all right, there's obviously something not right with that guy. So, and then you just kind of on top of each other. And it's like, yeah, before you know it, you're an hour or two into a game and people are like, I don't know what the hell's going on. You put things where people like, you hear something, I go and look, there's nothing there.
There's an interesting piece of what you just said there. When we get an hour or two into it, there's an interesting thing I've found running. If I've done it right and it's feeling really good and everybody's really into it, those games that have fear, tension, horror, or just disgust, or they're worried about something, or creep factor for certain components, that's a time when the cell phone goes off to the right, the notes go away, the dice towers stop, and everybody at the table, whether it's happening to your player or not, your character or not, just stops and goes, what did he just say? And they start looking and listening and really, really paying attention because it's fucking creepy. Now, all what we just said.
You get the guy that's like at the desk and always is monotone and never blinks. And then in one scene, he just starts like that and then goes bonkers, like apeshit bonkers, like just fucking, pounding on the table as a GM, and you're like, ah, and it gets in your face, and people are like, you get a player that's like, whoa, dude, hold on, man.
No, there's a way though so where we're going here now is that if you, and we talked about this a while back, I can't remember which episode. So if you don't remember either, start at 1, listen forward. Overused. And there is a component to me of horror, fear, tension, and terror, and all this stuff that you can overdo it. And I don't know, for me, some of it is the Vampire RPG. I loved it when I played it. I think I played too goddamn much of it without much of a break. I have no interest in going back, even at this point. Sean, do you see, and I know you, like you say, you haven't played a lot of it, but part of me wonders or worries if I run or play too much of that stuff like I have in the past, then it becomes like, oh, it's another corrupt official, and oh, yes, oh, another great horror, oh, yes, I'm terrified. Even if the description is new and crazy, it's the guy that doesn't blink. It's Freak Show versus an insane asylum versus a this other than a that. There is, sounds kind of like I'm a parent going, I'm worried about my child being desensitized to violence. I'm actually worried about my gamers and myself being desensitized in a way to the setting, to the horror game. Like, oh yeah, it's another deep one. It's another vampire. It's another zombie. It's another freaky thing at the circus or office or whatever the case is.
I think if you run horror, a horror-based game or campaign, it's got to be either a one-shot or it's got to be a very limited set of adventures. I don't think it lends itself well to a full multi-year campaign approach. I think you can do it, but I don't think you can expect people to be afraid every time you sit down for that long amount of time. the Trail of Cthulhu has some very long campaigns and some very thick modules.
They have
right?
one. The one really long one. No, Armitage Files is a sizable book, but if you're talking about a big epic one, they've got their it's across.
True Lies or
Eternal
Lies?
Eternal Lies, yes, which I have.
Yeah.
That's a hefty
So
one.
I think
Massive
but I think
Nyarlathotep. That's another big one.
well, I think it's the same time. So at the same and what Murder on the Orient Express
Another big one.
or
Yep.
or on the Orient Express. But the thing is that I think if I sat down with you and I was part of your group and you were running, okay, even if it was a limited time, and then we were going to play again and Brett's going to run again, unless Brett changes it up drastically from one game to the next, it's not going to be, it may not have it, it'll wear off maybe. But if Brett's always going to run one at a con once a year, or, Gamehole Con, Gary Con, Everest Con.
Yeah, EverCon, yep.
Right. And it's, maybe I join every time because Brett puts on one all the time and it's really good. And maybe I haven't sat in on that one game, but he pulls it off really well. Then that's fine. But I think they lend itself like, hey, if he's going to run a horror game and I'm going to join for 4 hours, it's going to be a horror game. But if I play in Brett's game again, maybe some of those things, maybe use the same tropes all the time, but it works awesome when there's different players.
Okay.
But I mean, like the Dead Babies thing, right?
Yeah.
You run Dead Baby. I mean, if I didn't run into Dead Babies, I'd be like, holy shit, this is crazy. But if you do it and I'm in your game group and it's like,
oh, Dead Babies, Brett, way to go. You overused that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, things swinging from trees.
Oh, hey, yay. More of those.
Gotta be just kooky, creepy stuff. You gotta go. There was stuff that freaks the crap out of me when I was a kid, and I think that's gotta come back.
I got to talk to your mom, see what you used to be terrified of, and pull it out.
I could tell you things that we did. I mean, abandoned farmhouses in the middle of the night, man, and there's nothing out there, and you drive by them during the day all over Wisconsin. My wife's like, serial killer lives there, serial killer lives there, serial killer lives there. Because they're creepy even in the daytime. It's like, who lives there? What's that all about? Where's the story? Who's been there?
Yeah, watch True Detective. HBO's the first season of True Detective. That's creepy as shit too. Okay, so Sean, if I were going to say that we're going to run a horror game, do you expect that is it something that you would expect could be slotted into any game system, or do you think that the mechanics really? We touched on this at the beginning, kind of went off on that a little bit, but do mechanics really help you there? Are you expecting mechanics to show up and help you say, oh, click, 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 the dice say, or the chips say, or the aspect says, I'm insane now, or I have lost humanity points, or I'm afraid. Do you expect that to be there to help you roleplay your character effectively, or do you just think, I'll figure that out?
I just freaking broke my bottle, man.
Did you? Oh.
Here I am opening a beer, and the freaking
you snapped it.
Bottle just cracked. Well, there's that one's down the tubes.
Oh, talk about horror. I think Kevin Lovecraft is just pissing himself right now. Oh, you broke my beer! That'd be terrible for Kevin.
I could have drank it still, and then have like blood coming out of my throat.
Glass shards in your mouth. So,
that's great, Sean. I love it. Oh, perfect for the show, man. Awesome. Great. Really, over the top, brother. I think some games probably capture horror better than others. But I still think it comes down to the mood and tone and the environment.
But do you want a mechanic there to help you roleplay? I mean,
if it happens, like if you've got Dread and you're working with a Jenga tower, certainly great. But some people like Dread and some people will not like Dread.
But you don't see that as a requirement for you to enjoy that game.
I don't think it's a requirement, but it's nice to play a game that may help incorporate the feel.
Okay. I really do think that some games are designed for it, or at least have enough features of it. D&D 3.0 and 3.5 tried the Heroes of Horror. I have that little splat book hardcover they put out. They tried to add some of it in it. And kind of like Ravenloft tried to bring it in, it always feels a little bolted on, like not a really nice bolted on, just a really very obvious, glaring inconsistency tacked onto something. But I've also known people that have just loved the hell out of Ravenloft. It did really well, and they had a good time with it. But whether or not they were doing it simply so that they could be afraid or something, or if they just like to, kill vampires all the time or something, I'm not sure. But what was that point for, Sean? Do you tell me
You
we're
see
getting?
my cat up there?
No, I missed your cat.
Animals can be creepy too.
Oh yeah, I love that. Cats are fun to be creepy with.
Creepy cats.
So you honestly, you don't. You know what, Sean? I'm going to challenge you, man. You got to run a horror game. You got to figure out how to do that.
All right, next time, next con, I will run a horror game.
Next time you will run a horror game.
Thing is, it's got to be like I'm gonna have to run it at like midnight to 4 a.m. or 10 to 2 or some crazy shit in a room with really dim lighting. Pick out the guests. I mean, if they register, that's cool. But I got to have some creepy dude there, creepy dude or woman who's like dressed up, but you can't see their face. It just they help assist me. Maybe the welcome the players.
That could be fun.
Never say a word. Just something like that. Like, hey, come on in. And they don't say any, but they just kind of gesture.
You know what? I'd be
Their
interested.
face.
I'd be interested to see. I mean, you've only played a couple of them, but any listeners out there who've had really good kick-ass horror experiences with games, what games they are. I don't necessarily need to know who ran it, but was it like this scary ass game of D&D and you guys were just living through the horrors of war? Was it a terrifying game? Because again, it's not just all about monsters and axe murders. There's various different levels of it. You watch Band of Brothers, there's certain points that are freaking scary. These guys, World War II, getting the ship beat out of them and blown up all around them. It's scary stuff, when you think about it.
Man. Jacob's Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder. That's fucking creepy as hell. So again, it's not always that supernatural weirdness, but I mean, I'm interested, and I'd love to hear what other folks have to say. I'm sure there's better ways. Sean, I only have a little bit of time every week to chat about this stuff. I'm sure there's better ways to do it than what we've thrown out there, and we probably have bandied around the topic more than and not gotten to our usual point as we should have. But
that's right.
I think they're fun. I think a really good horror game has, even if you can't get people, the players themselves. I've migrated away from I want to scare my players down to I want them to feel tense and nervous, because that is something I can invoke and force easier than I can actual fear, because it's hard to say what someone is or isn't afraid of. But it's easier for me to ramp up the tension and the nervous factor of it, like go, make things happen quickly, then slowing things down, speeding them up, the tempo changes and so forth can be a lot of fun. But I really do like trying to keep a certain level of seriousness in my games when I can, because then when the opportunity presents itself, even in a D&D game or a Savage Worlds game or something, you can drop the this should be scary or this should creep your character out vibe, because you haven't been crazy slapstick. Now, granted, my group and I would get, somebody you'll come up with an NPC's name, somebody starts making fun of it, and then you're fucked because you're going to have the giggles for half an hour. But you can turn it around. You can kill that and then pull it back in. But I really think fear, horror, and that tension, nervousness is a lot of fun and can really make for some good gaming. I think it's a lot of fun.
All right, let's talk about sponsor quick, hey?
Let's do it.
All right, so here's the deal. If you got a dice bag or you need a dice bag, you need to head over to greyedout, GREYEDOUT.etsy.com. As Brett is holding up in our video, is one of the products. Go and buy a dice bag from Michael Allhauser at greyedout.etsy.com.
Gaming NBS, 10%, right?
Yeah, use the promo code Gaming NBS, get 10% off your order. He's got some typical patterns that he has in stock that you can choose from, or you can custom make it. Maybe you've got a logo that you want to put on there, your initials. Maybe your game group's got some kind of logo that you want on there. He's done custom work for me for the past 3 years. He's always pulled it off. He just did a custom one for my buddy Lenny, so it looks really great. That's right. I saw that. Holidays are coming up. Buy one for a gamer that you know. It's got 2 drawstrings. They're thick cloth. They stand up, so you can just kind of pick out the dice if you want and keep it in there. But otherwise, support the show, support Michael, and head over and grab a dice bag. Absolutely. All right, let's get into die roll. Die Roll. Part of the show where we pull up 2 to 4 miscellaneous points of gaming or geekery we want to share with you. Brett has 3. I have 2. And before we go into that, Brett, we talked about this a little bit. And one thing that I'd like to see happen, if you are up for it, and I say you as in whoever you, the listener person, if you have something that you want us to talk about during Dice Bag and bring it up to the community at large.
Die Roll, actually, but that's okay.
What'd I say?
You said Dice Bag. Yeah.
Jeez, I'm like 30 seconds behind.
That's okay. Keep
Die
it going.
Roll. If you got something you want to suggest for Die Roll, hit us up on Facebook. Say, hey, I got an idea for Die Roll. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+, or our email at gamingnbs@gmail.com. We're at GamingNBS on Twitter. We're at GamingNBS Podcast, I believe, on Facebook. And then we're at, I don't know what the heck our handle is on Google+.
You'll find us.
But anyways, yeah. So Brett and I usually whip these up and around. But I mean, if you know of some that you want to bring, I mean, it could be anything that you should think gamers and geeks, should know about. Let us know, and we'll mention you on the show.
Absolutely.
All right. So Brett, do you want to start off this week?
Sure thing. What have I got? 3, as you said. So He Never Died. It's a movie. I happened upon this trailer on Facebook while cruising around. Henry Rollins plays Cain, as in Adam and Eve's son Cain. Never Died. It looks like this really fun. Speaking of horror, it's dark, it's brutal, and it's going to have enough of that kind of horror comedy to it. Like, oh god, that's not good. You've got a couple of those moments. It looks great. I'm a Henry Rollins fan, so that's just going to be fucking awesome. I got to find that movie when it's out. Second one I have is speaking of Sean's perspective. Last week I threw one out there, and Kevin Lovecraft, one of our buddies here, 6 Consequences of High Magic. He had put this up in our Google Plus community, and I've got the link out there in the show notes. And basically, it's kind of cool. There was a Dragon magazine ages past that I remember reading about this, but it goes into like, hey, super high magic, no need for sickness, no armies. Oh, by the way, we've got gods walking the earth. What could that do to people? What does that do? It's this, if nothing else, it's a neat way to think about high magic in games and so forth. Kind of cool stuff. The last one I had is, again, in honor of the horror aspect, Ancient Human Sacrifice in Wisconsin. SmithsonianMagazine.com. I got the link out there. There is evidence of potential human sacrifice in a section of basically prehistorical Wisconsin. Looks kind of cool. So put that it's a video on the Smithsonian website there. So kind of cool. Figured I'd throw that out, have people take a look at it, because you can never have too many plot concepts or ideas for your games. Sean, over to you, sir.
All right. So mine, if you're a Rifts player, yeah, I've got something for you. There's a Rifts character sheet for you it's somebody made up. It's off of Google Drive. Check it out if you're a Rifts aficionado and want to take a look at a character sheet. Mutants, number 2, Mutants and Masterminds, Shoots for the Stars. ICV2 has an article for Mutants and Masterminds, and if you're not familiar with that game, it's by Green Ronin Publishing and based off of D20. It's a supers-based game and has been around for a while. I believe I don't know if they're at 5th edition. I know they were at 4th at least. But with this one, it's a new intergalactic supplement, hence the Shoots for the Stars piece of it.
Interesting.
So it's 144 pages, full color, soft cover, as an MSRP of $29.95, and release is planned for December. So if you want to play Silver Surfer or whatever, man. Silver Surfer trademarked by Marvel.
Of course.
Or
Disney.
if you want to build your own version, something similar to that, check it out. All right. I think that's it for this show, buddy?
I think we're good, man.
All righty. So this show has been brought to you by patrons and utter BSers, Joe Swick, Kev Thulu, and Jeff Rademacher, amongst others. If you want to support the show, check that out. Otherwise, tell somebody, hey, if you like what you hear, tell somebody.
Absolutely. This is fun. We like doing this. We're having a good time. So far, no
Yeah.
one's told us to stop. So we're going to keep going. And even if you do tell
Yeah.
us to stop, we don't take advice too well. So
Great. Thanks for listening to the show. Appreciate it. All your support, one way or the other. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sean. All right, we're clear on the audio and want to open up a seat, man.
yeah, I'm